Hey, welcome to Startup Dad Headquarters, where we're exploring the intersection between fatherhood, entrepreneurship, and life. And today, Startup Dads, on the show, we have Anthony Witt, who is the founder of the Champion Entrepreneur. So I'm really excited to have Anthony on the show. Let me tell you a little bit about Anthony, and then we'll bring him in from backstage. So Anthony Lee Witt is the founder and creator of the Champion Entrepreneur, where he provides valuable information and resources to help individuals become the champion that deep down inside they know that they are. Anthony believes there are one or two struggles which holds individuals back from becoming the champions that they are meant to be, and he works tirelessly to help you overcome these struggles. So Startup Dads, I hope you guys are excited to hear this conversation and figure out how to bring out your inner champion. So Anthony, thank you for coming on to the show. Welcome to Startup Dad Headquarters.
Well, I am excited to be here. I'm pumped up just to meet all the dads that are listening today. You know, being a father is an amazing thing. And so I love that part of my life. I think that it's an extremely important part of my life. But then, of course, we got to make money to be able to support the fun and family time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to make that money. So, I told the audience a little bit about you. Please take a second and tell us right now, like, what's really exciting you about your business?
Well, what really excites me about my business is to be able to affect people's lives for change. So many people go through life not actually living life, but just being a part of life, just existing. I really love and really excites me to help people live life, live the way they want to, and do what they want to do. And so that's really what has me excited, what I really like doing. As far as me personally, I'm a father. I've got 5 kids. My oldest is 8. I think she's 8. Yeah, she's still 8. My youngest is 6 months. So 4 girls and a boy.
Whoa.
Happily married.
Yeah.
The kids keep us busy. But, the other thing that's got me excited about what I'm doing now is I get to stay home with my family. I get to structure my life in a way that allows me to be with my family. That's why I am down the road that I'm down, is because I realized that the other routes for me were taking too much away from my family and the people I loved and where I wanted to live my life.
Yeah, and that's really what we're trying to do with Startup Dad Headquarters. So thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for setting the segue right into the first portion of our show. And we like to kick it off with this quote: no other success can compensate. No other success can compensate for failure in the home. Would you agree, Anthony?
Absolutely. It's the concept. I was talking to an individual earlier today, kind of helping through some stuff. And it's the whole principle that, if you miss your first sales event, or you have a book release and it's a bad release, guess what? You can bounce back from that. But if you miss being there for your daughter or being there for your wife or your son, it's hard to bounce back from that. That ball doesn't bounce. So I completely agree with that.
Now, you mentioned you have 4 girls and 1 son, and your oldest is 8 years old. So holy cow, that is just insane. I have 3 kids, and they're all under the age of 7, 6, 4, and 2, all girls. We decided to stop at 3. My brother has 5 girls. But you went forward and went for 1 more or 2 more, and you got the boy, which is congratulations on that. But how is life going for you guys? Do you guys have twins in that mix, or like that just seems crazy?
We do not have twins in that mix. And just to be clear, the boy is not the last one. He's actually the second one. I was trying for more boys, let's be honest.
Okay.
And I didn't. Kept getting girls, and I love my girls though, because they are absolutely all precious, and they all have their own personalities. Jokingly, I tell my wife, I say I love my children, but I was done at 1, and I think we're about done now. So I love them all though.
Yeah, I interviewed Wes Schaefer, who has 7. His oldest is 19. His youngest is 13 months. I was like, that's crazy. Yes. So to me, 3 is where we're done and we're good to go. But how are you balancing, 5 kids, the oldest being 8 years old, and now working from home and everything that you have going on in your business. And before we went live, you told me that your wife also has her own business as well. So how are you guys balancing all that?
Yeah, it's strategic, and it's always changing. We have to be strategic. One of the things that I have found is that I'm more diligent in my work life and more progressive, if I can use that word. I don't really like that word at all, but in my work life and how I'm moving forward and what I'm doing, if I'm up early. And so that's actually one of the ways that I am able to do family time. So if I get up at 5 now, unfortunately, my oldest daughter and my second youngest daughter both get up at 5:30 typically. I actually have time. I have 2 hours where I can say, sweetheart, go read a book for a couple hours, and then we'll go do breakfast when everybody else gets up. But I can get 2 hours worth of work done before the day happens, so to speak. Sometimes that's not work. Sometimes that's just, me personally. It's health, spiritual life, whatever it might be. But I can get those things out of the way. And so now, look, I can have dinner with our breakfast with the family. Yeah. And so it's systematically managing our stuff. And the other thing my wife and I do, you mentioned my wife, she's a marriage and family therapist. And so she is a counselor, right? She counsels people. Her work is typically in the evening. That's when she works. So we can do a flip-flop. And then at the same time, I can come up from my office and we can do lunch together. And so just being home allows that to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So I got 2 questions off of that with that kind of productivity, if you will, in terms of waking up at 5 a.m. How consistent? Because I've been trying to be consistent with waking up that early. Actually, I've tried 4 a.m. Now I'm probably looking more closer to 4:30. How consistent are you with that? And I know that, like my 2-year-old now, sometimes she wakes up at 5:30 in the morning, and it throws your entire game plan out the window, because you think, okay, I'm going to have that 2-3 hours of time. How consistent are you with that, waking up at 5 a.m.? And then what do you do? I think you mentioned, telling them to read a book or stuff like that, but how do you get back into the flow of things after you've gotten that disruption?
Yeah, those are both good questions. The first one, as far as how consistent I am with that, I had a pretty bad week last week. I was 2 days, I think I didn't make it at 5. I was up late the night before. I didn't go to my bedtime, which I think is just as important as a wake up time, right? Yeah. Because if I say I'm going to get up at 5, or if I'm going to get up at 4, and I'm actually looking to push back to 4:30, because I think that's going to be good for me personally and family wise. But if I can't be consistent with my bedtime, I'm never going to be consistent with my wake up time. And so for me, I'm playing with that still, trying to figure out what is that optimal for me. Is it 6, 7, 8? Is it more? For me, it looks like it's about 7 hours is about the right number. Over that, I'm overly tired. Under that, I'm actually, exhausted. So about 7 hours. So I'm setting that at 10 o'clock right now. It works out pretty well for me to do that. What I try to do is make it up on the back end. So what I mean by that is, if I miss a couple days during the week, the work week, Saturday and Sunday is not a sleep in day for me. I'm going to get up and work for those 2-3 hours. Maybe that's all the work I do for that day, but I got that work in. Now I can go be with the family. Now, as far as the kids go, one of the things that I've found is if you engage with them at the beginning, right when they get up or right when they come down the stairs, or, I have a basement office, it's great. It's always cool down here. Right. But they got to come all the way from the, second floor all the way down here. It takes them a little while. I hear them coming. Right. So I'm already mentally preparing myself for which direction am I taking them next? Where am I going to put them? How am I going to break away from whatever it is I'm doing to do things? So for me, it's a mindset preparation of my own. I know that sounds odd to deal with your kids, but if you're really engaged in something, sometimes you have to say, okay, I can hear those footsteps on the upper stairs. I live in an old farmhouse, right? Yeah. I can hear those footsteps up on that upper stair. So, okay, here they come. Okay, I'm going to settle down, finish those couple thoughts, and then go from there. And I think the other thing that I've been able to do with my wife is we've trained them that when I'm sitting at the desk and I got my headphones on or something of that nature, they know to wait. And so that's really a parenting issue. Even in the morning, sometimes they'll wait. Okay, dad's finishing up what he's doing, whether that's a recording, whether that's a, whatever it is, a thought process, writing down a blog, whatever. And now I can bring them in. I grab them. I let the girls sit on my lap. They love that in the morning. Sometimes all I got to do is hold them and you can keep working. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but that's kind of the way that I do it. You know, I have a book or, you know, a VeggieTale movie that I know, something that's not just simply putting them in front of something maybe that could educate them.
Right.
We have several older movies that we like to let the kids watch. Sometimes we'll let them watch it in the movie or in the morning because it's more educational. So I don't know. That's kind of the things that I do, and it seems to work.
Yeah, awesome. That was perfect, and we love VeggieTales here as well. So that's definitely a good way to grab their attention and get another 15, 30 minutes of time to get that work done. What I really loved about is, which I haven't done. Usually, when I hear the footsteps, it goes, "Oh, that's the feeling." But shifting that to, okay, I know they're coming. I'm on the first floor, so they're on the second floor, but I could hear them. And because we usually have, there's a couple of doors in between, but getting my mind prepared for, okay, they're coming, and then engaging with them right away to redirect them somewhere to get that extra 15, 30 minutes. So yeah, I love that.
And that's really what I'm talking about there. I'm not talking about being some super dad where they just woke up and I got interrupted and now I'm totally engaged with my child. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is I find something to engage in so that actually, to be quite honest, I can get back to my selfish, work that I was engaged in.
Right.
But that also, I think, is a huge time for being a father.
Yeah.
When my little girl comes down the stairs and I let her sit on my lap, that's a big deal for her.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be an absentee father and say, no, you need to go back upstairs, I'll see you at breakfast or I'll see you at lunch. Well, that's not really being a father. That's just being a guy in the basement.
Yeah. Now, when do you, so that they've come down, you got 2 hours of work in, let's say it's on the perfect day where they don't come down, you get the 2 hours of work in. Now you're doing breakfast with the family. When do you kick back into your normal workflow, if you will?
I haven't set a strict rule on that yet, but I like it to be a half hour and no more than an hour. Mm-hmm. If it gets into that, then it starts getting into laziness on my end, where then I start making excuses. Oh, I'll go, help the kids make their beds or something. Well, that's all good and fine, and that's good being a father. But then I'm slacking on the business side of it, which is getting engaged in my community with my people and my clients. So I like to say, if I go up at 7, I like to try to say I'm going to be back downstairs in about a half hour. It's a little bit longer than that. Sometimes it's shorter than that. It depends on where we're at in the meal process. Sometimes by the time I get up there, I'm the only one left to eat, so it really depends.
Yeah, I love that because, the morning is like the most, I guess different individuals are, everyone is different, but for me, that's the most productive time. And if breakfast does drag on for an hour, hour and a half, then you're losing a lot of that productivity. Plus, social media wise, if you want to post things, you want to get that stuff out a little bit earlier than 9 o'clock, because my 6-year-old doesn't leave. My wife and my 6-year-old doesn't leave until about 8:45 to take her to school. So if I drag, like you said, at breakfast, then I'm not getting back into the groove of the business until like 9:15, and that's a little late sometimes. So yeah, definitely connect with that. So we talked about the family aspect of things. Thank you for sharing some very useful tips and what you do. But this is Startup Dad Headquarters, and we want to talk about your start. So Anthony, please take us back to the beginning, the start of your entrepreneur journey.
So as far as being an entrepreneur, for me, this is kind of like round 2, if you will. I graduated college. I went to the Northern Illinois University. I wrestled for them. I graduated college. And what do you do when you graduate college? Well, you go use your degree, or usually you try to use your degree. Well, the only reason I graduated college is because I was in college and I thought I got to get out of college. So I better graduate with something. So I got a degree, graduated, got out, did some work, realized that sitting behind a desk at that time in my life wasn't for me, wasn't what I wanted to do. Got a couple different jobs, worked for public sector, private sector. Eventually I decided to start my own company. and that company was a residential and commercial maintenance. So, essentially I was a handyman, but I was able to build it into some stuff, built it into doing some decent commercial work and doing it for some fairly well-known national brands. Just, me and my one other guy, right? And he was a part-time guy. And then, 2007, 2008 hit. We just had the first kid, and someone offered me, hey, you worked here before. We want you to come back. You'd be great for this position. The guy, to be quite blunt, I kind of got scared and said, okay, this is great. I'm going to take it and just let it drop. So that was entrepreneurial journey number one.
Okay. And
so what I found was that's not going back is only good for me so long. I can't handle it long term. I don't know if that resonates with any of the listeners or any of the watchers today, but like I can only handle it so long. And what I mean by that is the restrictiveness of it.
Right.
I will give you 50, 60 hours a week, but let me give them to you on my terms. And that doesn't exist. So I started kind of hopped around a little bit. I'm basically one course away from my master's at this point, and I'm still not satisfied with where I'm at, what I'm doing. I started really diving into what makes me unique, what is special about me, what can I add to the world, right? How can I benefit people? Not how can I go and make $1 million, but how can I give benefit? And if I can give benefit and give value, the finance side is going to come on the end as long as I figure out the funnels, right? That's what we have to do.
Right.
Because we can't just follow our dreams and say our dreams are going to make us rich. But once we figure out what we have passion about, once we figure out what we're happy about, what really just makes us click, our visions, our mission, our life goals, then we can figure out how do we funnelize it. If you don't figure that out, you'll never make any money.
Right.
But so for me, that was realizing that, I have a set of strengths that a lot of other people don't have. And I only bring this up because it really focuses on what I'm doing now and the people that I'm working with now, which is I'm dyslexic. So even the communications between you and I've dictated all of those. So sometimes you might say, well, that was a weird word he put there. Well, that's because I didn't read it correctly when I went back and tried to correct it because I dictated it. So everything I do is that way. And because of that, I have a different perspective on how you address problems. My perspective when I go into a situation is different. When I go into a boardroom, or if I'm going into a room with a bunch of people and I know there's going to be some reading, I strategically place the place where I sit. I strategically place myself in a certain situation. Most people wouldn't even think about that. I can avoid having to read something in public just by the way that I sit and the way that I look at a room before I walk into it. Most other people would have no idea how to do that. So what that's given me is a different perspective on life. I don't approach things the way that most people do. I look at it from a different side. And so that jumped me into, that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I'm happy. That's what I'm excited about. That's what really drives me. And so I started the Champion Entrepreneur because I wanted to focus on my strengths, not my weaknesses, because I can focus on the weakness side of that all day long, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I did that most of my life. I didn't live in the dumps. I mean, I was a positive person, but I focused on the weakness side of it, not the strengths that it was giving me. And so that's when I developed the Champion Entrepreneur and kind of where I'm at now.
Awesome. Now, what was the time frame for this happening, and what I think you mentioned with your first business, you had your first child. So when you launched the Champion Entrepreneur and when you took the leap, can you take us back to that and tell us how that actually went down? And what was the conversation with your wife in terms of now taking the leap, I guess, a second time?
So I mentioned that, I was never happy and never satisfied. I used to work at a public job. I used to work for the government, and anytime I worked for a village, I was their public works director, essentially. And so anytime something happened, fire, rainstorm, water main break, tree fell down, too hot, whatever, my phone rang and I had to go to work. Well, it got to the point where my phone would ring and my kids would cry. I couldn't handle that anymore. Like I was, when I look back on it, and my wife's like, yeah, absolutely. I was stressed as stress could be. I'm like, I'm not stressed. I got to get out of here. Right. But that's what it was. The stress was getting to me. It was affecting my health. And so we moved to a job we moved back out to a family farm. You know, I mentioned I live in an old farmhouse. We live on the wife's family, you know, estate, you know, farmland. There happens to be an extra house here. And I went to work for an ethanol plant. And the ethanol plant had the luxury of having 4 on, 4 off schedule. So I flipped, right? So I had 4 days off every week. Well, you know, every 4 days I had 4 days off. Mm-hmm. And so that's an amazing amount of time. Mm-hmm. You know, I worked 12-hour shifts when I worked, but when I was off, but man, I had a lot of off time. And so I really started to develop out this concept of where I was going. And so for me, that all started back in 2014, about November 2014, roughly, maybe August. I'd have to actually look somewhere in there, where I really started developing. And I started kind of pushing through the ideas, the concept. Where can I actually make a change for people? How can I help people along the road? And then I actually took the full-time leap. So I was able to do it part-time, you know, depending on what part of the week it was. Sometimes my off days were, you know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So working with people digitally is harder on the weekends. So that was restrictive, but I got to the point where it was either shut it down over here or jump in full feet. For me, that was just actually, we are now sitting in the middle of July, right? Something like that. When this goes live. And for us, that leap took place in May. So the beginning of May. So we're just kind of pushing on through that. I got to the point where it was one or the other. And the wife knew that I wasn't happy with that restrictedness. And she wanted me to, you know, follow my passions and follow the dreams that I have for the family. And she allowed me to do it. She's 100% behind me and has supported me the whole way. So
awesome. That's really awesome. And how did you know, it seems like you know, with the dyslexia, that you have grown to, you know, reflect and understand what are your weaknesses, what are your strengths. How did you go about figuring out the champion entrepreneur? Did you read, for example, for me, it was the 48 Days to the Work You Love is the book that really got me from the entrepreneur ADD to really figuring out what I wanted to, what I'm passionate about and what my strengths are and how can I best serve the community. And that's how Startup Dad Headquarters came about. How did you come about your process with the champion entrepreneur?
So my process, you know, I sat down and said, what are my strengths? And I came up with a couple strengths. And that's when I really sat down and realized, man, I got this set of strengths that I've never even been calling a set of strengths, which is when I sit down with a group of people or with a set of individuals, you know, and someone gives a problem, I typically don't answer with the same answer that everybody else has because I'm really looking at it from a different perspective. Right. So I realized that. And the other thing was I was looking at something that I needed or that I wanted. And what that was action. I need help taking action. I was fired up and inspired and motivated. You know, I had drive, passion, but the next step to that is action, which is exactly what the champion entrepreneurs all focused on is action, the action side. That's kind of, you know, we can argue back and forth. Is the action come before the motivation or after? I don't really care. My point is that you have to continually be taking action. The entrepreneurial journey or the small business owner journey, the journey where you're your own boss, it's a continual journey of falling flat on your face and then getting back up and going to the next time you fall on your face. Mm-hmm. It's not how often you fall on your face necessarily, but it's the fact that you fall on your face and you get right back up. Mm-hmm. And so you're continually taking action. You learn from those experiences. And so for me, that's part of it that I drove forth. And the other thing for me was you know, so how do I come up with this concept? Where am I looking at this? You know, I'm a religious person. You know, I believe in Jesus Christ. And that's what I hold to personally. And I happen to also be a collegiate wrestler. I wrestled Division I wrestling, right? Mm-hmm. So I happen to get involved with a lot of Olympians, you know, a lot of gold medalists, silver medalists, Paralympic, all kinds of people, right? And so I was involved with this organization called Camp of Champs. And this organization is religious, but also there's several gold medalists that are part of this organization. And I spent most of my youth and my college life, interacting with these people. And so I said, they're driving to be champions. So I kind of, stole that concept from them, if we can use those words, because we all have something inside of us that we can be a champion in. I firmly believe that. I believe that we're created to be that way. We all have uniquity. We all have something that's very special. So we can all be champions. So that's kind of how I got that idea concept rolling.
Nice, nice. Now you talked about the funnel, right? Because now you have this wonderful idea. I'm sure you went through a process of validating it and getting a target audience. Sounds like you have a good understanding of who your audience is. How do you, what is this funnel thing you talk about, and how does it work? How do you make money?
So yeah, that's a great question, right? So I was going to pull up a document and read it directly for you, but I can't seem to locate it real quick. But essentially, it's all about engagement. So how engaged can I get my quote unquote audience or my people? And then it's developing off of that. Sometimes it's developing the power or the habit of purchase. So the example here is, I have a podcast. I know you release this as a podcast and the other things, right? This is your free content. This is the way you get your people engaged. And so then the next piece of content might be a $2 PDF or something like that. And so I've developed a PDF, and actually I will gladly give it to the people listening today with no problem. It's called a daily, I got to remember what I called it, the daily action plan of a champion. And it's exactly what we talked about earlier. It starts with, you formulate your day. You say, I'm going to get up at this time. I'm going to quit at this time. And it goes all the way down, and it hits the different fundamentals of our life. So it's faith, it's family, it's health. And then it gets into, business and career. And I'm going to spend this amount of time on this and this and this and this. And it tabulates it right at the bottom of the page.
Yeah. It's like a worksheet, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a worksheet you fill out. It takes 5-10 minutes every morning. And it's kind of that action plan for the day. Remember, I said at the beginning, I'm all about action. So then that's part of the funnel, right? So if I get you to buy that for $1 or $2, now you're in my funnel. You're listening to my free content, whether that's my blogging or my podcast, and then you're buying this $1 or $2 thing. So then we go to the next step. And for us here at the Champion Entrepreneur, that ends up being mastermind groups, accountability coaching, and that kind of goes to the higher end products that we have so far. Other products, always developing that length of the funnel. So you get somebody in, you get them paying attention, you're engaging with them. And then once you're engaging with them and you're getting conversations back and forth, you can kind of maybe get them into that $1, $2 thing. And then you can kind of move them through. Sometimes people jump from the free all the way to the, to the all out coaching. That happens. And that's what you really want. But it's really just having all of those different things. And at every level, the person is more or less engaged with you. As they move up that price point, if I can use that for an example, as they move up that price point, they're getting more and more engaged in you. By the time that, you're a full-fledged coach for them or something of that nature, what you're going to see is they're now an ambassador for you. And so now you nurture that relationship. They might be paying you $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, a month, a week, whatever. But as you build that through, now you got to take that person and realize that they're more valuable to you than the person that's buying the $1 thing, because the person that's buying those higher products is actually going to spread your word, and then there's organicness, and then the momentum ball goes. So that's kind of how I make it happen.
Nice. And then you talked about the Champion Entrepreneur podcast, which we've talked about it. I've provided some feedback. I love the show. And when did you launch that? And I know you're doing so well with the podcast. And I think I listened recently to episode 72, I believe. Which is amazing, because I know you didn't launch it too long ago, so you are doing a really high frequency. So how is that going, and how are you incorporating it? I think you talked about how it's your free content. How are you incorporating that into your business, and how many of your clients are you finding are coming through initially through that as opposed to your blog?
Oh man, that's a good question. Actually, a lot of my initial clients don't necessarily come through that at the current time. So just to answer that question first, a lot of those people are coming through my other engagement, whether it's a group that I happen to be a part of on LinkedIn. I use Facebook, but it's really more for me. It's there. And so if someone says something to me, I say something back, and my auto post stuff. But I use LinkedIn more readily. So I might be talking with someone, and then I gauge through there. But as far as the podcast, actually, now that I think about it, it's more come through my guests. You know, I've been able to book clients off of people that have been my guests. So that's worked out well because I'm engaged with that person. I spend 40 minutes, you know, talking to them, and then maybe a 15 minutes before, 15 minutes after. So I get a really good sense of where they're struggling, where they're at. And then I offer them value. I just give it to them. I say, you know, I might be in my email, hey, we were talking about this. You should check out XYZ, or here's an idea to help you get past this problem or whatever that you were facing.
Nice.
And so, yeah, does that answer all the questions?
Yeah, definitely. And now, you know, I know you know, the reason why I bring up the podcast is it's the champion entrepreneur podcast, right? So you're this champion, you're the voice of the champions, but you're still a dad, like we talked about at the top of the show, and there has to be doubts and fears. Can you share with us one of the doubts and fears that you face, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, you know, a doubt and fear that I face, and the first thing that comes to my mind is really the momentum ball. So if I have a bad day, sometimes I'll go up to the wife. I'm like, man, I don't know if this is ever going to work. I don't know if I'm never going to make it. And so that's really a lack of motivation, and then allowing that to become a doubt, allowing that to become a fear. That's probably one of the big ones that I allow to get in my head. And so for me, it's not about taking the action steps further in the business. It's about taking the action steps on my own growth. So what I mean by that is, am I regularly reading? Did I spend any time reading how to better myself today? Did I spend any time listening to, you know, podcasts or on-demand radio or lectures, TED Talks? Did I do any of that today? The chances are on those days when I feel that way, I didn't do anything to build in. I didn't take action steps to build my momentum and my inspiration and my drive. I allowed that ball to stop or set still, you know? And once it sits still is what? It's stagnated. I say once it's not moving, it's stagnated. And once it's stagnating, it's not helping you. So even your momentum, even your passion and your drive and your inspiration and all of that, you have to feed that. Because if you don't feed that, it's kind of like an hourglass. It's emptying. It might not be emptying extremely quickly, but guess what? You're not going to be as, you know, pumped up today as you are a month from now or a week from now if you're not doing something to build that up. Now, some of that might be, you know, for you and I, we get to talk to each other, so we can get fired up and build off of each other, right? Even just having this conversation right here.
Right.
But if you're not doing those things, more than likely, those are the days for me where I go upstairs and I say, man, I didn't have she'll be like, oh, you said you did this. I'm like, yeah, but man. When I catch myself doing that, which more and more often I catch myself literally doing, I say, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop saying that. I'm not even going to use that language. I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to go put my headphones on, you know, put a kid in the jogging stroller, and we're going jogging, and I'm going to go listen to something inspiring, something motivating, something in my niche, and go from there.
Nice. You know, that is, you know, believe it or not, as you talk about you and I being able to talk, and you know, if I could for a second talk about this as that was a testimonial to me. I know you said you're a Christian, believer in Christ, and what you just said was a testimonial to me, because this morning, last night, we have these for my 6-year-old and my 2-year-old. They both have these lower GI issues that we've been dealing with, and it's been a struggle for years, and we're still dealing with it. And last night, my wife was like, I think we have to take the 2-year-old to the emergency room. And she took my 2-year-old to the emergency room this morning, all the way in Boston, which is an hour away. And, you know, I sent her a message saying, you know, I feel horrible. I can't be there. And, you know, I got all this work I need to get done with the business. And I think about this morning, I didn't listen to the inspiration. I didn't build that motivation. And doubt, actually, when I woke up this morning, I was like, am I going to be able to do this? You know, because I recently took the leap April 11th. You know, am I going to be able to build this business with everything else going on, with all these hospital visits and everything that's going on? And I sent that to my wife. And this is why, you know, having a spouse who has your back and is supportive is so, so important with what we're doing. And my wife was like, listen, this is why you married a NICU nurse. This is why God put a NICU nurse in your life. I got this. Don't worry about it. Go rock your interviews, get the business up and running, and do what you got to do. So, you know, what you just said absolutely spoke to me. And I know it spoke to a lot of startup dads who will be listening to this show in about a month. So thank you for sharing that with us. What is one of the things you've sacrificed along your journey?
Man, one of the things I've sacrificed. Well, on a, I'm going to call it on a selfish note. One of the things that we've sacrificed as a family is TV. So we have a TV in our house, but that's it. It's not connected to cable. It doesn't, we don't even have a, you know, I grew up in a family where we never had cable growing up. We just had the rabbit ears, right? And I'm not even that old. So most of my friends had cable, and we had it, you know, to a point where we decided we're going to cut that. It does a couple things for us. Number one, it gives us that money back, right? You don't have to pay for that anymore. You don't have to put that money out. The other thing that it does for us is it allows us to spend time reading. You know, I've heard it said that if you go into the millionaire's house, what you're going to find is more and more books. But if you go into the middle or lower class income, what you find is bigger and bigger TVs. We're spending their time, and I put myself in that at one point. We're spending our time saying, I want that bigger piece of electronic. I want that bigger thing. Well, how about you go get some better books? How about you find those things that are going to actually push you forward? So that, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's one of the things that we sacrificed. We decided, you know, the wife and I decided, we said, no, we actually want our kids to be more focused on the reading. And that goes for us as well. You know, after the kids go to bed, well, guess what? You can only watch so many reruns of the movies you have before we're going to sit down and we're going to read, or we're going to engage with each other. If we engage with each other, we can build the business through that as well, and our relationship, because as our relationship grows, the business is going to grow.
Awesome. What do you guys do from a private health insurance standpoint? Because I know you have your business now and your wife is also running her own business. How do you guys handle the private health insurance, especially with 5 kids? And, you know, this is one of the things that a lot of dads say that they struggle with, and they use as it's the golden handcuff, right? To stay within the 9 to 5. I need private health insurance. So how are you guys handling that?
Well, it helps that I grew up in a family where we didn't have health insurance, you know, through a work. My dad was self-employed growing up, and so I understand that world a little bit. So that helps me explain it to my wife. It helps me kind of tell her how things can be or will be. You know, I'm one of 7 kids, and I'm only 34. So health insurance was around then. We didn't really have health insurance growing up, so that helps. But for us, what we found is there are programs out there specifically designed for entrepreneurs. And so we have bought into or buying into a group that, you know, we pay a certain deductible. It's like $500 a month or something like that. I don't really even know. The wife handles that part of the payment. And that's it. Everything else is pretty much cash pay. But when those really big things come, what's going to happen is I'm going to have to pay cash or figure out a way to talk. I have to do the negotiation for myself with these conglomerates, but I can get a lower price and I don't have the overhead. So I can still go to the doctor. I can still go to the emergency room. I can still have the major surgery. I just have to do the negotiation on my own, and it's a lot cheaper. So I have a lot of friends who have done this, who have used this program. You know, most of them are faith-based programs specifically. So you pay, you even write your check to the person in need that's in the group. And so that's really cool because you can engage with them faith-wise. You know, you can give them words of encouragement, tell them how you're praying for them. I know you had surgery on your kidney or whatever it is. And so that's kind of how we're handling that side of it.
And how do you find that? Was that something that was just announced through the church, or is there a way you go online and actually find those type of programs?
I'm sorry, can you say that?
I'm sorry. How did you find that program? Was it something that through your church they made an announcement, or can you go online and actually find a program like that?
You can go online and find them. For me, what happened was I had a buddy who had been an entrepreneur pretty much all of his professional life, ran his own business. And so he did it. And then we actually moved, and another buddy did it with a different organization, same exact setup. And I couldn't even tell you what the names of them are right now. I can probably get them for you, but I can't even tell you what the names of them are. But it's really just through getting engaged with other people and talking to them and saying, what are you using? What are you not using? How are you making this work? And then they kind of tell us about these different programs.
Anthony, what's your next immediate plan to grow your business?
Next immediate plan to grow my business. That happens to be, I am compiling and writing, I'm writing a book essentially. I've said I'm writing a book before, but now I'm several pages in, on the concept and principle of masterminds. You know, that's the whole Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich, his laws of success. There's several other people have written on it, but there seems to be some confusion on it. How do I form a group? How do I get a group? How do I get the right people? What type of attitude should I have for this? And so I've just started writing on it. And, you know, I've got about 11, 12 chapters set aside that I'm going to, you know, throw together. I'm just kind of been cranking on every day. I try to spend 2 hours writing it on it. So that's the big thing. And really for me, I think it's going to be valuable information for people. But for me, the reason that I do it is it's really also a tool. I'm not going to make a ton of money on a book, but what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to be able to now get in front of other audiences. You know, there's podcasts, there's radio stations that want book authors. Okay. Now I can get in front of those people. You know, you can get on Good Morning America if you have a good book, right? So It's really just an avenue. It's actually a lower price point item, but it's my content that I can put out there. So that's what I'm working on now. And that's what I'm really focusing on. I really like to have it done in the next couple months, you know, kind of self-publish it probably and just go from there and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely keep us up to date when that comes out, because mastermind groups is something that I've discovered even in my own community. When I ask in terms of how many dads are in mastermind groups, I get people who say they don't even know what a mastermind group is. So, and I've actually started a couple of mastermind groups as well. And the big challenge is, how do you get someone who, I was listening to an interview with Pat Flynn just yesterday on the Relaunch podcast, and he talked about how, and someone asked him a question about how do you get someone who is higher above you or where you want to go into your mastermind group. So I think what you're working on is great in terms of having that resource, and you know, definitely keep us up to date when that comes out, so we can share that. So I can share that with the Startup Dad community and get a copy myself. So now we're gonna enter the final segment of the show as we get ready to wrap up here, and I like to call this the rapid fire handyman segment. And this is where we quickly reach into your toolbox, and then you provide the Startup Dad community with some additional useful tips and tools, because you've already provided us with some awesome tips and tools already. Are you ready to rock?
I am ready.
All right. What's your number one time management hacker tool?
Probably the number one hacker tool that I use rev.com. That's rev.com. I don't use it all the time, but what I'm able to do is I'm able to be in my car, walk down the street, whatever, I can talk a blog into my phone, into their app, send it to them, and they will dictate it back to me. They dictate it with, a lot of them are court reporters. Some of them are stay-at-home moms. They're real people. It's not a computer. And so they're trying to say, well, he used the wrong adverb there or whatever. I'm horrible at English, right? But allows you to be very quick at turnaround. I can submit a 500-page blog post. I can submit it, you know, record it in less than 5 minutes, send it to them. They'll have it back to me. They say in less than 24 hours, and typically it's like a 2-hour turnaround. So if I go to visit the folks, I can talk several blogs and I can, by the time I get there, I can then go post several blogs. And so that's a great tool and great resource that I use a ton. I recently interviewed the founder, and it's just an amazing company, and they're really pushing forward to do great things with dictation and allowing people to do things faster, essentially.
Nice. And that definitely could be the answer to this next question is what is one productivity hack that you have? And I think rev.com is definitely one of those. Do you have another productivity hack?
I don't use it a ton, but I mean, Egg Timer, which is a timer. I use my phone actually probably more than the Egg Timer, but Egg Timer is just a timer. And so what I find, again, if you go back to my daily action plans for a champion document, everything has a time on it. I put a time for how much you're going to spend on Facebook each day. And so I personally, and I find that a lot of people follow this way, if you put a time to it, it's going to fit into that time frame. And so I set an alarm on my clock when I'm writing. I say, I want to get done this amount of things. And so using Egg Timer is a great idea, a great thing. But I bet you a lot of people say this. I mean, we're on a Google Hangout, but I really like Google Docs. I really enjoy the way that it allows me to stream flow my things. I mean, I use Evernote as well as Dropbox, but I really use Google Docs because it filtrates through everything that I do and everything that I work through. So those are some of the things. And now that I think about it, probably my number one, after saying all that, my number one is probably actually my calendar scheduler. I do at least 5 based interviews a week. And that's not to say anything else to private calls, coaching type calls, mastermind type calls. And I don't spend more than 5 minutes a week doing anything with those because my scheduler schedules it for me. Now I use Calendly. There's a lot of good ones out there. I know that you use a great one, but one that I would recommend would be Schedule Max. It's a great one. I know you recently had Mark on, and he's a great guy, and his company is great, and he's really trying to add value to his customers. So I would highly recommend that.
Yes. What's one way you manage your health?
So for me, I mentioned that I was a college wrestler. And so I always think that I'm not healthy, which there's some truth to that. But one of the challenges that I've taken on, I have a buddy, and he's actually what I would call my spiritual mentor, if you will, but he's actually younger than I am. We're good buddies, and we meet every Wednesday morning, discuss a book, kind of talk through things together. I challenged him because he had been losing weight, and I said, hey, I got a buddy who went a year and a half and only drank water. And so I said, how about we do it for a month? All we're going to drink is water. That's it. We're not going to drink any milk, no coffee, no tea, and we both are fairly healthy in our drinks, some juices, nothing, just water. And so we're halfway through that now. By the time this airs, we'll be through month 2 because I've actually got a couple other people on board for the month of July. So that's one way. And it keeps me more excited, more going. And then the other thing for me is I try to work out 6 days a week. Now that might be running, that might be biking, that might be I got a rower machine. It's just doing something that's physically active and bringing my heart rate up because I was kind of raised in the whole athletic side of things, right? I spent so much of my life doing that, after school every day, before school every day. In college, we were doing 3 workouts a day, right? I find that I'm so much more centered when I can burn off some of that stuff, when I can, sweat every day. So I try to do that 6 days a week.
Now, this is not typically one of my questions, but I have to ask. You have 5 kids. Your wife works her own business. You work your own business. How are you finding the 6 days a week to work out?
That's a great one. Sometimes that's what I do at the 5 in the morning, right? So typically when I get up in the morning, I'll sit down and I'm actually doing a project with the church I go to where I'm I'm scribing the New Testament. So I'll sit down, I'll write for 40 minutes, and then I'll get up and I'll go do my run. So I can be back in the house, do a 3-mile run, be back in the house and sitting at my desk by 6:10 and still have all that done. Another way we do it is, it's quiet time. So all the kids are having quiet time. Maybe they're reading books. Maybe half of them are taking naps, depending on their ages, right? she'll go for a run or a jog or a bike ride. And when she gets back, now it's my turn. So we're capitalizing on that downtime with the family.
Nice. And the final question is, what's one book every startup dad should read? Actually, it's two books, one for entrepreneur and then one from a fatherhood standpoint.
Oh man. From the entrepreneurial standpoint, I would have to go with Charles Howe. I always say his name last is Hogg. The Power of Habit. That book is really kind of changed my thinking on things. I really like stuff that gets into the research of why it changes, how it works. And that also allows me to look at my life and say, I got this bad habit that I'm doing. How do I get around it? Or how do I, put the right stuff in the right place? So that book is a great book. And then, probably a good book, and I can actually pull it off of my shelf here, and I'll tell you what it is. It's called Every Good Endeavor by Tim Keller. It's not necessarily meant for dads. It's actually meant for people working. But I think if you take that book and you apply it to your life as a whole, again, you break down those segments. You don't allow work to be over here, family to be over here, wife to be over here, kids to be over here, health to be over there. You say, I'm one person, I live one life, and all of this has to go together. I can't segment those things. I had to break down those walls. It's a great book for that. It really kind of talks about just really the biblical application of work and how you apply it to life.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. My final question, it's a little bit longer, but it usually produces really powerful results. And here it is. On the other side of this broadcast is a dad who's been listening in or watching this episode, and he's fired up and ready to go. Maybe he also has 5 kids, or maybe he has 3 kids, and he's like, man, if Anthony could do it, I absolutely can do it. But you know how life is, how startup dad life is. Once he closes his laptop, turns off his phone, a week from now, life is going to happen, and he'll be right back to the day-to-day minutia of things. What would you say to that dad to inspire him or keep inspiring him beyond this broadcast?
Probably the first thing I would say is you have it in you. You have the ability to be a champion. I mentioned the wrestling side of my life only because when I was about halfway through my college career, it finally clicked. I never won a bunch of matches. I wasn't some huge college success at all. But it finally clicked in my brain that I could be and do the champion life that I wanted to be. And that's what really clicked for the first time for me. So what I'm telling you is you have the capability inside you to do it. You have the capability to go forward. And my advice to you would be take your inspiration and your motivation and put it into action. Mm-hmm. That action might be continually building your inspiration and your motivation. That action might be hiring a coach. It might be hiring someone to help you with your accountability, getting into a mastermind, surrounding yourself with other like-minded people who want to take steps forward, and then continually taking steps forward. So, one of my quote-unquote mantras, if you will, is one day, one step. If I take one day, one step every day, guess what? I'm going to get done with the marathon. I ran the Chicago Marathon a couple years back, and it was one step at a time. I couldn't have done that just standing up and saying, I'm going to run the marathon. I'm going to be good at this, right? It wouldn't have happened. But taking one step, one day, one step, you're going to make it extremely long journey if you do something like that. And you're going to fall down sometimes. That one step's going to be a bad step. But guess what? You're going to learn from that bad step. And then tomorrow you can take 2 steps. So just get out there and take one step today.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on the Startup Dad podcast and sharing everything and your inspiration and helping us to become the champion that we have inside of us. Please take a final minute. Tell us where we could find you, how we could connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
So you can connect with me at the championentrepreneurpodcast.com, or it's for short, make it easy for you, it's tcepodcast.com. Again, that's tcepodcast.com. You can email me at awitt@tcepodcast.com. You can call me. My number is 815-531-5600. 888-878-5450. So if you're struggling with the step part, taking the continual step, reach out to me. I'd love to talk with you. You know, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. So reach out to me, shoot me an email, send me a text, shoot me a call. I'd love to help you get to that next step, because you can only get to the next step if you decide to take a step. And so again, get out there and take a step. I'd love to help you take a step, you know, get into the community that we have here at the Startup Dad, right? So get out there and take a step. That would be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. Have a great day.